And welcome back to the David67 Celtic News YouTube channel. Today going to do a couple of short videos. First of which is looking at the potential ins and outs at Celtic in the upcoming January transfer window. News coming out of Celtic yesterday is that Brendan Rodgers has earmarked 5 players who are definitely on their way out in the January transfer window. The top of that list is Ideguchi, who was signed by Postecoglou 2 years ago, played a couple of games, then unfortunately broke his ankle and never really got back into Postecoglou's plans. Ideguchi then was sent off on loan to Avispa Fukuoka in the Japanese J-League. He's had an excellent season for Fukuoka, taking them to their Japanese Cup win, taking them to the highest ever league position, and was on the shortlist for Japanese Player of the Year. However, Rodgers has made very clear that Ideguchi has absolutely no place in his plans, and Celtic are negotiating with Avispa Fukuoka, the team he was on loan at, and Vissel Kobe, with regards to a permanent transfer for Ideguchi back to Japanese football. Do find it a wee bit surprising that Rodgers isn't even going to have a look at Ideguchi, but it may be the feedback from coaches such as Kennedy, Strachan, etc., is that Ideguchi is not worth persisting with. However, it does look like Celtic are going to at least recoup the 800,000 we signed him for 2 years ago, and there is potential for, if there are 2 teams interested in him, bumping that up by a few more 100,000. Not too surprisingly, the other players on their way out for definite, it is thought, are Kobayashi, Siegrist, McCarthy, and Bernabei. Kobayashi, I'm a little bit disappointed by. I think that he was kind of thrown in at the deep end. Did have a number of central defensive partners, which can't be easy. I think he is a player who came from Japanese football with a good reputation, has been on the fringes of the Japanese squad. However, he doesn't seem to have settled into Scottish football. I personally would be keen for him to actually get loaned away to a lower Scottish Premier side or a Championship side in Scotland or England, to give him maybe a good 6-12 months of first team football under a bit less pressure, to see whether he starts to accommodate to Scottish life and Scottish play, and Scottish customs, etc. But it does appear that a transfer back to Japan's most likely. Bernabei is said to still be well respected in Argentinian football. The Argentinian national manager was at one point considering calling Bernabei up to his international extended squad for this squad meeting in an international break. But very much Bernabei's not on Rodgers' list of players to stay at Celtic. I always felt Bernabei was more of a midfielder, a left-sided midfield wing back rather than a left back to fit into the Celtic system. Clearly his defensive work hasn't been good enough, and isn't likely now to get much better. And so he's on his way out. McCarthy has been a bit of a fiasco for Celtic. Did play a few games under Postecoglou right at the start. Then since that time, he's a bench warmer, and then for the last year or so, seems to be getting paid to sit on his backside on the sofa watching daytime TV, rather than being part of Celtic's squad. Celtic did try to get rid of him in the last winter transfer window and the summer transfer window just a few months ago, but there were no takers. And so I think one way or another, Celtic have to get rid of McCarthy this January, even if it means paying off the remainder of his contract. And and sending him on his way. Siegrist, I think, is actually a very good goalkeeper. Doesn't seem to have fitted in at Celtic. Seems to have fallen below Scott Bain in the pecking order, probably related to the fact that Siegrist is not Scottish, and so Bain ticks the box for the UEFA quota system for European competition. I don't think there'll be any problem getting Siegrist transferred somewhere else, as long as Celtic are willing to accept probably a lower price than he's worth. I do notice quite a few other Celtic fan sites are suggesting we should also loan out or transfer Mike Nawrocki and Gustav Lagerbielke on the premise that neither is good enough to play for Celtic. I think Nawrocki actually looked really good in the couple of games he played prior to his injury. Hasn't been given a chance to get back into the side since then. Lagerbielke, I thought, after a slightly nervy start, to be expected for a young man leaving his home country, being thrown at the deep end straight away. I think he actually got better and better. Bit of a hiccup at the game against Feyenoord, where I think he was unlucky to get both yellow cards and give away the penalty. He apparently did have 5 or 6 clean sheets in central defence for Celtic, and so I think Lagerbielke and Nawrocki are very much part of Celtic's long-term plans. Happily, it does look like Celtic are going to be sending Nat Phillips back to Liverpool as soon as possible. And Jurgen Klopp actually does seem to be quite keen to get Phillips back, as he's having a wee bit of a centre-back crisis himself at Liverpool. I think Phillips has been practically useless at Celtic. He was shaky when he came on for CCV at Hibs, and he was absolutely diabolical and useless when he was playing from the start against Kilmarnock, and was largely to blame for both the goals, and could well have given a couple of other goals away, and was completely useless at distributing the ball. And I think he also has ruined, to an extent, Liam Scales' confidence, as he also was very poor against Kilmarnock for me on Sunday just past. Also, there are many people clamouring for Paulo Bernardo to be sent back to Benfica early, as he's no good. I think Paulo Bernardo is a good player. He's young and is going to get better and better with experience, training, coaching, and time out in the middle, much the same as Odin Thiago Holm. I think Bernardo and Thiago Holm were both signed to be backups to Turnbull, Hatate, O'Reilly, McGregor. I don't think either Holm or Bernardo were designated as being starters in 23-24, but are both designated as starters, assuming that, as expected, Matt O'Reilly leaves us this January or next summer. Turnbull, I think, also is on his way out. He seems to have no intention of signing again for Celtic, despite what is said to be a very, very good contract offer to stay at Celtic. He seems very keen to disappear off to English Championship football or to one of the lower half English Premier League sides. I honestly think that if we do get a reasonable fee for David Turnbull, we should just take it. Doesn't want to play for Celtic. And I think when he goes to whomever he chooses to go to in the lower half of the Premier League, in England, or the Championship promotion and battlers, I think they're going to find a player who is good at the top end of the pitch, but pretty awful in the middle, and seems to have no energy, no drive, and little inclination to get involved in the nitty-gritty of midfield playing. I do also think that if we were to get rid of Nawrocki and Lagerbielke on a permanent basis, that would leave us rather bare in central defence with only really CCV, Scales and Welsh, assuming that Kobayashi is gone, and Nat Phillips is back to Liverpool. So I think Celtic would be stupid to get rid of Agabielka and Rocky, and given the fact that we may be without a few players for the Asian Cup in the first 6 weeks of 2024, again, getting rid of early of Bernardo would be very premature. Now, moving on to players that I think Celtic should be bringing in, I think the priority areas are a third striker, to go with O and Kyogo, and goalkeeper. Celtic do seem to have a number of options as additional striker to go with O and Kyogo. Matthias Kvistgaarden, the 21-year-old Danish under 21 international, had a good season with Bernabei. His asking fee appears to be up towards 8.5 to 9 million now, which is more than Bernabei were asking for in the summer when we were said to be very close on the final day of the window for getting him for 5.5 to 6. I think Kvistgaarden is going to be a very, very good player. I think could come into Celtic on day one and score a lot of goals. Whilst Kyogo and O and Maeda are away in the Asian Cup. And I think Celtic would be very clever to sign him. And I think he's also a player who within 3 or 4 years could very much double or treble the asking price. A little bit similar to Odsonne Edouard, whom we signed also for around about 9 million and then sold for about double that down to Crystal Palace. Hooijdonk seems to be warming the bench and playing in the reserves at Bologna. Said to be available for 6 million. I think he also would be a very good option, and again could come in, assuming that he's kept up his fitness, on day one and score tons of goals in Scotland. And I think both Kvistgaarden and Hooijdonk are more than good enough to score goals for Celtic in Europe. Bojan Miovski at Aberdeen has been a success there in his season and a half. 4.5 million is said to be Aberdeen's asking price. He does give that option of being a wee bit better in the air than our current strikers. Is two-footed. Obviously has settled down into Scottish life, and so that would be a definite option for Celtic. And I wonder, given that Lawrence Shankland's contract is up in about 18 months, whether Hearts might look to move him on either this window or almost definitely the summer window following that in summer 2024. I think Shankland would bring a lot of good options to Celtic, one of which is the fact he's Scottish, and so that helps with the UEFA quotas. Shankland clearly can score goals in Scottish football, has been a relative success in international football, scored a very good equaliser for Scotland against Georgia just a month or so ago, and I do wonder whether maybe a combination of Shankland for around 2 million and Van Hooijdonk or Kvistgaarden for a bigger fee might well be an option for Celtic to explore this January and or in the summer. So they certainly do need to sign another striker in the winter. The better that player is, the better for Celtic. The other player I think the other player Celtic need to replace right now is Joe Hart. I don't think we can wait as long as Brendan Rodgers seems happy to do until the summer window of 2024. Hart for me has got poorer and poorer in the last few weeks. He's looked very shaky in the games against St Johnstone and Kilmarnock. Did make a few good saves against Kilmarnock, but I do feel he should have been much more able to come for that ball across the box that Phillips knocked into his own goal. He went down rather early for the Kennedy shot that beat us against Kilmarnock. He has become very, very dithery in terms of coming for crosses and long throws and clearing out the box. Just seems to stand in his line, get caught in a melee of defenders and attackers, flaps at the ball, and it's caused us the goal against Motherwell, the goal against St Johnstone. could have caused a couple of goals against Kilmarnock at the weekend. So I think we need a younger, agile, good shot stopper who's also able to command his box. Lunin of Real Madrid may well be an option, depending on the long-term fitness of the two goalkeepers above him in the pecking order at Real Madrid. Kevin Kelleher of Liverpool was said to be very much one of Celtic's main targets. He seems to have gone backwards a wee bit at Liverpool just recently. Has been a bit shaky deputising for Alisson Becker in the European matches, and was, I thought, rather shaky playing the last 3-4 games for Liverpool when Becker was out injured. But I do think Kelleher in the long run would be a good goalkeeper for Celtic. The question being whether Celtic want to pay the transfer fee that Liverpool would ask for Kelleher, and I do think the fee for Kelleher probably would be 2 or 3 times more than he's worth. But I think that's the way the market is in terms of English Premier League at the moment, where players, their value gets grossly inflated above what they actually are worth. We'll be doing another video later on today, which does look at another young goalkeeper who Celtic would be very good to look at signing. But the practicalities of that might be a wee bit complicated given his young age and his nationality. But do have a look at my video later today that does explore a possible new young goalkeeper. Have popped a wee poll in the community section just to see what your own opinions are as to which striker Celtic should go with. I've listed Kvistgaarden, Van Hooijdonk, Miovski and Shankland, and there's also a fifth option for someone else. And if you pop the name of that someone else in the comment section, you can have a look at that along with the voting numbers for the other 4. Other positions I think Celtic do need to strengthen, although not necessarily in this transfer window, would be a new left back. Greg Taylor for me has gone backwards under Rodgers. I think he was a very good player for Celtic last year under Postecoglou, coped very well with the inverted fullback role, defended for the most part well for Celtic, was always a threat in the final third, creating and from time to time scoring goals. But this year his confidence seems to have been shot, and I don't think he really has coped well or adapted well to the way that Rodgers thinks left back should play. I would be very keen for Celtic to move Scales across to left back, which is his primary position, which then would open up a place for Nawrocki and or Lagerbielke besides CCV on a regular basis, which I think in the long run will be excellent for Celtic. And I think also Scales is a better defender than Taylor, and also gives us more of an aerial, stronger defensive option for corners, free kicks, balls into the box, long throws, etc. And so I think maybe moving Scales to left back wouldn't lose us very much in terms of attacking play, and would gain us an awful lot in terms of defensive solidity, cutting down the threat down our right side, our left side, the opposition's right side. And I think Johnson on one side and Scales on the other would be a strong defensive combination for wide play from the opposition that cost us very dearly against Kilmarnock a few days ago. Other position I think Celtic need to look at is defence, rough and tough midfielder, a ball winner, an enforcer, a sort of Scott Brown, Victor Wanyama, Neil Lennon, Paul Lambert type of role, a player who can come in, mix it with other teams, get the team energised and organised. I think McGregor and Iwata are both very talented players, but they don't seem quite so vocal or as good at organising their teammates as a Brown or a Wanyama were before. I think it's a position that Celtic don't need to rush into replacing, and looking at the options in the summer window, assuming that Iwata doesn't further progress the way he has just recently. I think Iwata is a very good option for Celtic given his versatility, covering both fullback positions, centre back, and defensive and central midfield roles. And so I would love to see Iwata playing more and more over the next few months to the end of the season and see whether he can maybe expand his abilities to be more of a midfield enforcer and organiser. A lot of people were actually pointing out that after he was substituted against Kilmarnock, that Celtic's midfield and defensive linking broke down. And in retrospect, I think that's actually a very good point. I thought Iwata had quite a quiet game, but certainly Celtic looked far less organised after he went off against Kilmarnock, and it coincided with a spell where Kilmarnock very much got on top of Celtic, which led them to winning the game. A couple of wee bits of news just to finish off. Very good news that Dies and Maeda are back into full training yesterday, which is excellent. Probably too early to see him playing against Feyenoord, but I think very much earmarked for a place on the bench or even starting against Hearts at the weekend. And also very good to see that Carter Vickers was in full training yesterday and is fully expected to be in the lineup for the game against Feyenoord tomorrow. And I think Carter Vickers being back fully fit and organised in defence, be it beside Miovski or Scales, will make Celtic 10 times more strong in defence than we were with Phillips in that position. And I think if we can get Maeda back into the side before Christmas, I think that actually will give Celtic a lot more pace, threat, organisation up and down the right or left flank in preparation for the busy spell around Christmas and the end of the year, plus obviously the very vital game now against Rangers at Celtic Park just before the end of 2023. As always, if you haven't already, please do click that subscribe button. It would be a nice wee Christmas present for me to see those numbers carrying on going up and up little by little. As always, we'd be delighted to see anybody's comments, opinions, thoughts in the comment section, and always happy to have a nice wee debate or discussion regarding that, either via the comment section or in future videos. As I said just earlier on, I'm going to do a very short video later on today regards a potential new goalkeeper for Celtic, and I'd love to see your opinions on him as well as part of that other video. So for today, thanks for listening, thanks for watching. Chat again tomorrow as a preview for the Feyenoord game. Goodbye and hail, hail.